You want me to put?
That's okay. Where's that at? Yeah. What is this? Actually, the next one. Trying to get Once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to City Hall, 790 Homestead Boulevard. We're about to open the special council meeting, which is a 2012-2013 second public budget hearing. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Fairclough McCormick.
Here.
Councilman Maldonado.
Here.
Councilman Shelley.
Here.
Councilwoman Warman. Councilman Williams, absent. Vice Mayor Burgess.
Here.
Mayor Bateman.
Here. Additions, deletions, or deferrals? Do we have any? Okay, hearing none. I'll move on. Order of business, City Attorney. Order of business, the City of Homestead rollback millage rate of 6.2435 mils. The final millage rate is 6.2435 mils, which is the same as the rollback rate. Discussion of final millage rate and final budget. It's open to the... You want to start with your presentation?
Sure. Mayor, the staff recommends Mayor and Council adopt a tax resolution providing a final millage rate of 6.2435 per $1,000 of assessed value for ad valorem taxation for real and personal property within the City of Homestead for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2012, ending September 30th, 2013. Millage rate is the rollback rate and reflects a reduction from last year's millage rate of 6.2917 mils. The budget is a no millage rate increase, in fact, decrease. There's no reduction in city services, no increase in city fees, no layoffs, and preservation of the general fund.
Okay, questions from council? Millage rate we don't open to the public, do we, Rich? Millage rate, do we go to the public? Yes. Any questions from the council on the millage rate? At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Questions from the public on the millage rate. I'm sure nobody argues with the fact that we're going backwards with the millage. Okay, no hearing none, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Final questions from council on the millage rate. Okay. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
I'm sorry, I was writing some. Did we actually read the title of the resolution? Okay. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Homestead, Florida, adopting the final millage rate of ad valorem taxation for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2012, ending September 30th, 2013.
Okay, motion?
Move it.
Second? Okay. Madam Clerk?
Councilman Maldonado. Yes. Councilwoman Fairclough McCormick.
Yes.
Councilman Shelley.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burgess.
Yes.
Mayor Bateman.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tab 2.
An ordinance of the City of Homestead, Florida, adopting the budget for each of the several funds and departments of the city for fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2012, ending September 30th, 2013, providing for repealer, severability, and effective date.
Move it.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Staff?
Mayor, staff recommends the Mayor and Council adopt the final budget for several funds and departments of the City of Homestead for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2012 and ending September 30th, 2012. The total proposed budget for the first budget hearing was $161,500,000. $51,291 in revenues and expenditures pursuant to council direction at the first budget hearing. An additional $26,004 has been added for solar beams at Roby George Park, CIP project number 364, bringing the total proposed fiscal year 2013 citywide budget to $161,077,295 in revenues and expenditures. The change is reflected in section 15 of the ordinance.
Okay. Questions from council? Yes,
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Schiller.
Just for clarification, we had the discussion last time regarding the centennial event and possibly allocating funds. That doesn't need to be included in this budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. Please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Again, I'm not going to limit you on time, so please come speak and let us hear what's on your mind. This is your tax dollars at work.
Good evening, council members, mayor, city manager, city attorney, department heads, and visitors and residents. My name is Joe Von Lauer, and I am the chairman of Committee for a Better Homestead. As many of you will recall, the last time we were together, I spoke on behalf of our subcommittee who is here tonight, and we made some comments on the budget. And tonight, we just have some further comments without any suggested additions and deletions. We have a few questions. I'd like to begin with the City Hall and the City Hall Fund, Mr. City Manager. We'd like to know where these funds are located, who manages it, and what commissions do we pay. We estimate that we're earning about 2.6% on that $18 million.
To the mayor, Mr. Perez.
Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Van Lau. The $17 million, it's currently like $17.5 million. It's accounted for in a separate fund. It's a new City Hall fund. It's part of cash and investments that are pooled throughout the city. So they're held in we have several bank accounts, and then the bulk of the investments are currently handled. We have an investment advisor that manages all of the investments, and that's part of it.
So these funds are situated in various banks throughout the city, and are they invested in CDs or stocks, bonds? What kind of investments are they?
No stocks, sir. Those are primarily would be government agency, treasuries, various funds. And again, it's a concept in government called pooled cash and investments. So it's not that, these $17 million have a CD called, New City Hall Fund. It's part of the city's pooled cash and investments, and among that, we have the $17.5 million that is allocated for the New City Hall Fund, and that's how it's accounted for. But it's invested all together. They're all invested together.
Okay, good, thank you. Next is the Parks and Recreation. The subcommittee was wondering whether or not there are any plans to outsource the management of these parks.
No.
And we have a comment on utilities. The utilities in this city are old, and they need a lot of repairs. They're constantly needing upgrading. Do we budget for these situations, these conditions?
I'll respond for electric, and yes, we do. We budget for maintenance and repairs as well as upgrades.
Are there any plans to upgrade the utilities so that they are, let's say, more competitive or equally as competitive as FP&L and other utilities that might be available in this area?
Our facilities are actually, our field facilities are in better condition than Florida Power and Light. So our facilities are newer because a lot of them were replaced in 1992. So our field facilities are in better condition, actually.
Good. Okay, thank you. And some comments, general comments on the general fund expenses. We noticed in further evaluation of the budget that there are some departments which have really accelerated spending over the past several years. And we looked from 2011 to 2013, and we also had the 2010 budget. If we went back that far, these numbers would be even higher. But for example, the city clerk's office between 2011 and 2013 spending increased by 76%. That was the city clerk. The planning and zoning increased by 40%. The general services increased by 17.6%, and parks and recreation increased by 38%. And if we went back to 2010, the increases would be bigger. But the problem is that especially in this economy, and especially since around 2008, our revenues are declining while the expenses of various departments are increasing. So what's been happening over the past several years is because of the current administration philosophy of not raising taxes and not cutting services, we've been able to sort of manipulate the budget so that the budget is balanced, but department budgets are going up, revenues are going down, taxes must go up, as the city manager has pointed out, at some time in the future, unless we can find a way to increase revenues. Either taxes must go up or services must go down. It's inevitable. That's the way government works. And so we have to find a way to increase revenues. And I'll get back to that in a second, because I want to say one more thing about budget and departments in general. One of the things our subcommittee came up with was the idea of, in each budget book at the end of the year, the individual department head add a paragraph or two about the budget of their individual budgets and spending and projects for the current fiscal year, and what they see happening budget-wise for their department in the next year. Is that something that could be done?
Spending, really, the budget is a reflection of the policymakers' priorities. So department heads, for the most part, adjust according to the priorities and the levels of service that are determined by the legislative body. So really, it wouldn't be the department heads that determine, you know, what do they think next year should be, because we begin with the end in mind. What is it that the legislative body wants? And sort of it flows from the people to their elected officials and then to the staff. And so that's how each year the spending priorities is determined. And I think, and I appreciate you mentioning the different anomalies as you see some of the departmental budgets, because I think it's important for us to at least make mention of those. The best example of one of the anomalies that you mentioned is in the Parks Department, where you would see a substantial increase from one to another. And as we mentioned at the previous budget hearing, the reason for that increase is because of two parks that are currently being funded through forfeiture funds from the police department. Those monies are no longer available, and therefore those parks have to be funded from the general fund. And at that point, we made a determination so if the police department no longer have the funds to fund those parks, do those two parks really belong in the police department, or should they be transferred over to the parks department? And then with discussions with the mayor, council, and staff, it was determined to place those two parks into the parks department and fully funding their operations. So that's why you see that big jump. And the planning and zoning is another perfect example, because on the planning side, see, as you look at, I think you had mentioned 2010, say 2010, the planning department was processing 44 applications. The following year, 2011, they go down to 39 applications. Well, the next year, they're up to 60 applications, and we anticipate in 2013, 75 applications. So on the one hand, that increase in workflow is a very good thing for us. It's a great sign that the economy is starting picking up. The problem governmentally for us as a department is that, well, if you almost double your applications coming in, if you remain at the same staffing levels, then what you'll end up having, the downside is your service levels will go down, and then also you'll be hampering your economic development. So what we've tried to do is cautiously inch our way to address those increases in applications, or also being careful not to overcompensate, and trying to keep in mind what we have is, cost per application in dollars is the benchmark that we use, or at least we look at it. And so 2011, for example, while our numbers look really low and the budget was substantially less, our cost per application in dollars was $14,801, whereas what we're proposing, our cost per application is $12,880. So there is a lot of different factors that we look at in trying to address the staffing needs, and that's pretty much where we're at. So the good news is applications are going up, and we're going to do everything we can to really address them so that they can come in. And one other thing that we asked for funding for this budget, with the mayor and council have approved in their first reading, is a process improvement study to try to figure out, is there anything along our bureaucratic procedures can we trim so that applications will go through faster? And we're going to look at that. We had a study that was done on our customer service department, and we'll be coming back to the council within the next month or two to kind of discuss some of the things that we found and how we can improve customer service and start shrinking some of the processes that we use, and hopefully we'll find similar benefits through a study in planning and zoning as well. That's the long and the short of it. And I also agree with what you're saying about the concept of, you cannot continue to have the same amount of service with reductions in revenue and with fixed costs just going up every year, non-discretionary items. So that's a long-term thing. We think over the next year or two, we've tried to be very careful in status quoing these budgets so that we don't end up, that we get constant demands for additional service. And so the real challenge for us all has been trying to just hold and keep what we have without, while meeting the mandates of not raising the taxes and not laying off employees and not. So it's been a tough situation with substantial reductions in your property values. But we think over the next year or two we can hang in there as long as there are no greater burdens that are put on us as on the service side.
So you think that the millage rate will stay the same next year or continue its downward newfound trend?
Again, the problem is there's a saying in predicting the economy, there are two types of economists: those who don't know and those that don't know they don't know. And so I never like to sit here on the dais and predict anything about the economy other than to tell you that there's certain things that we're hoping for, one of which is at the very least next year, we're hoping for stable. Is it going to be down again next year? Will it be slightly up? Will it be stable? We're hoping for stable. We'll see. I think the national economy is still pretty uncertain at this point. Hopefully, we'll have a clearer picture by early next year. Now, well, there's no your crystal ball. If your crystal ball works, We'll take it into consideration.
There's no question that if the economy starts to get better, then, as we say, a rising tide lifts all boats, and that includes us. But in the meantime, we're dealing with the status quo, and so at the end of the last hearing, Councilman Williams and Councilperson Waldman asked us if we had any suggestions for beefing up the revenue. And Chris is going to pass out to the folks on the Diaz a plan which we have drawn up. And basically, it talks about forming a coalition between government and the private sector. And the object of this group would be to find the funding to pay the $6 million obligation that the city of Homestead has for the interchange, and also find investors to come down and be situated at the 328 interchange. All of the typical businesses that we always find around any exit. And this is not exactly a proposal. It's an idea that we would like council and the city manager to review, and from that, maybe we can come up with some ideas, because this thing seems to be right on our plate at this time, and this is something on which we can really capitalize. We can bring some revenue into the city by making the most of this interchange, and it seems like it's going to happen. So our mission is to raise our half of the money, and the other side of the mission is to bring in some businesses to be located right there at that interchange. So if there's anything that we can do to help in this process, we'd be happy to do it. And then in closing, I'd like to say that all of those on our subcommittee are really pleased with the cooperation of the city council and the city manager and the department heads in putting this budget together. It's been a lot of hard work. Everyone participated. Committee for a Better Homestead spent an awful lot of time on this budget and worked diligently, both at home studying the budget and at our meetings. And we think that in view of the loss of $7.9 million in revenues, that the budget came out to be very well in the end, and it's something that we can live with, and now we just hope that next year things get a little bit better and we can start to fully fund all of the programs that we have out there and begin to fund some programs which don't yet exist out there. And so for that, we thank you all, and we let you know that you have our full cooperation in the future. Thank you.
Council?
Mayor.
Yes, please.
Thank you. This is the 5th time that I've sat up here through a budget process, and I'd like to thank, this is the first time we've ever had any input like this in the 5 years that I've sat with citizens coming and doing a thorough job. I mean, we've always had people that show up and pick out one item that pertains to them or whatever, and that. So I want to thank the committee for their hard work and their diligent work that they've done to bring things to light, not just for themselves, but for all the citizens here. And I also want to thank our management and his team, because this is the most thorough budget book that I've ever received up here. And that makes my job easier to do when I can look at things and have a thorough book instead of partial things here and partial things over there and kind of things, you know, you're not playing a shell game. Everything is in front of you, and they can answer any question you give them. So for that, I just want to say thank you to both parties for everything they've done in this process.
Okay. Dr. Bonlauer, my hat's off to you and the entire committee. Again, you brought a new level to our budget process, and some of the things that you point out, you were dead on. Some of the departments that have taken serious increases, and the manager, I'm going to hold him to it, he said that we'll do some analysis, we'll find out if they're really giving us our bang for our buck, so to speak, and we'll see what will happen, whether it be development services or whether it be park and recs, and we'll see who comes forward and gives us the level of services that we're paying for. Because some of these departments over the last 2 years have almost increased 100%. Almost 100%. And I'm not going to sword fight or argue with the manager over it. He's assured me there's a reason for it. He's assured me that we're going to get the level of services we deserve. So we thank you for each and every one of you who worked tirelessly through this process. Please pass on to anyone who's not here tonight that we are, very humble and honored that you stepped forward to do this. Because it's not easy to stand up at that podium. It's not easy to stand up there and point out one department after another that's raised either their employee level by double or their dollar level by double, or by 40% or 60%, 30% like you brought out. So that'll give us a chance to monitor these departments and see if we're getting our bang for our buck. Thank you again.
Yes, to the
Yes,
mayor.
please.
The last time I sat here through a budget, I was on that side of the dais, and it was a packed house, and I'd heard resident after resident come up with complaints about the budget. But as I sit here through this process, I see the Committee for a Better Homestead. You're coming up here with valid questions, and you're coming with substance. You spent a lot of time sifting through the budget and devising questions that were relevant and bringing forth ideas that were beyond rhetoric but substance. And I commend you and the committee for doing that, because we didn't see many do it, and you did. So thank you for the effort and time that you put into going through this budget. And to the city manager, Mr. Perez, and assistant manager, Allison Love, and staff, thank you for all your time and talent that you put into this. We recognize that this is a very long and laborious process, but you did it, and you did it well. I believe that this is a budget that the community and this council can live with. Doesn't lay off anyone. It preserves our general fund, doesn't increase the millage rate. So I commend all of you for the role that you played in crafting this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'll just add one, that your timing is perfect on the interchange and what it can do for this community in job creation and an economic impact. Tonight the council received a letter from the Alger family that was sent to myself and to Aneth Prasad, Secretary at FDOT for Transportation for all of Florida. And the letter is quite lengthy, so I won't take any more of our time, but it basically wraps it up by saying, we are pleased to partner with you. We are pleased to offer up our property and work towards a completion of a second interchange. So you're very timely with that. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Coleman.
First of all, I too want to thank you for taking my advice and following through. I know it was very difficult to find the time. I know how much time it takes for me. I can't speak for the other council members, but I'm sure it's the same to go through the budget line by line and then have the numerous meetings that we have. But if you wouldn't mind, I would love to sit down with you one-on-one and your executive committee or whatever, whoever you want to bring, and go over some of these ideas with you one by one. Because there's some things I see here that are brand new, and I'm excited to learn more about them, but at the same time, I think I can maybe share some things with you as well. And we've never really ever had a conversation or met, so I look forward to that. And if you'll just give me a buzz, we'll make an appointment. We'll make it in the daytime, evening, whatever's convenient for you, and just sit down and talk. And I look forward to getting to know you better. I really do. Some I know, but I look forward to getting to know you better. As far as those crystal balls, we'd all love to have one. But I can tell you, with me being in real estate, and that's why I was a few minutes late, because when you get a client these days that wants to buy a house, you have to work. You have to act on that. And I can see the market changing. Now, will we ever be back to where we were in 2004, 2005, 2006. I think it's going to take a long, long time to get there. But I do see a turn, and I've talked to the manager about this as well. And with that ad valorem, that's what we depend on. So with that being said, I hope we can incorporate that in our discussion as well, and maybe I can bring a few facts to the table, and we can put our heads together and decide whose crystal ball we're going to take. But we're hoping, of course, all of us, I think every council across the United States, they all hope that taxes are never raised, ever. But as our population continues to grow, it's going to be a difficult challenge, but I embrace your suggestions, and I'm really looking forward to sitting down talking to you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you to the staff. If you guys knew, and I hate using that term, you guys, if you ladies and gentlemen knew how much work, time must have gone into this, because I've been on the council since 2001, and I have never, ever seen anything like it. And trust me, they're tough on us too. You know, they're tough on all of us. And the poor directors, I just see the beads of sweat on their brow every time budget time comes around with Mr. Griffiths, because he lays it on the line, you know, what do you have to have and what can you do without? So I look forward to meeting with you, and I just want to say I'm glad I'm done with you, because it was a lot of work, but good job to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, final questions? Okay, at this time, any further questions from the public?
Hello, good evening. Just wanted to make some comments, if I may.
Sure, name and address. For
George Sapiro, 4651 Sheridan Street, Suite 480, Hollywood, Florida. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the thoughts and suggestions. I wanted to take a moment to talk about cost recovery. Some of you have heard my thoughts about it before. I wanted to take the opportunity to share it with everybody at once. Cost recovery, I think, is a problem for the city. It's a problem, a marketing problem for the city, an image problem for the city. I understand the city needs to be compensated for its work, but there's other ways to do it that are more business friendly. And I'll give you a couple of examples. A family wants to get together and open a small business, a coffee shop, a clothing boutique, salon, restaurant, whatever it may be, and they can pull their resources, figure out what they want to do, figure out what the bricks and mortar are going to cost, figure out what their financing is going to cost, figure out what the labor is going to cost, what the material is going to cost, and how much profit they can expect. They can do their numbers, and they can figure out whether their business is going to work or not. The one thing that they can't figure out is cost recovery, because when the business comes to the city to make whatever it is that they want to build, you don't know what the cost recovery is. It's basically an hourly fee that's charged to the client, basically to this businessman, and you don't know what you're getting into. It may be low, it may be high. I'm happy that our last go around cost recovery was much lower than it's been in years past, and when other people were here, and unfortunately I still think it was high. And the problem with that fee is that you have no way to challenge it, no way to dispute it. You can ask to see a breakdown of how those hours came to be, but it's just a list of hours, and you know, you're told that this is what the consultants charge, and you have to accept it. I'm speaking more of prior experiences in other administrations where I've made issues, and I've actually had arguments with staff about it. It didn't happen the last time around, thank God. But I've had arguments about the fee being so high that it was as much as the cost to prepare the product that you were submitting. So if we were submitting a site plan, we paid as much to that engineer to design and spend hours to draw that site plan and make sure it was a good site plan. It cost as much to do that than it cost the city to review the work that was already done. That's not right. That can't work. Then you hear the horror stories. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories that are not horror stories, but what you do hear are the horror stories. This scares people when they think about whether they want to come build to the city of Homestead. You know, this guy wants to open a restaurant or a salon, is going to say, well, I don't really know how much I'm going to get hit here, so I don't know if I want to invest my life savings, the money I borrowed from mom and dad, to invest in the city of Homestead. I've heard stories, and I can tell you for a fact. I'll give you my story. I've gotten cost recovery. A few years ago, I got a cost recovery bill for something that took place a year and a half before. How, you know, you start your business, you think you're doing, maybe, you know, any business that starts at first is going to be, you know, just on the line, and suddenly you get this huge bill that's maybe equal to how much you paid to get the design done. Totally unexpected. Again, things have gotten a lot faster and a lot better, but it still scares me as a businessman because there's nothing set in stone that says that 2 years from now, things are going to get better, not worse. I don't know if next time we come around, it's going to go back to getting a bill a year later and a bill being disproportionate to what's being built. If I want to do a plat, the person that the City of Homestead has hired to review that plat will charge you a flat fee, a very reasonable flat fee for a certain number of pages. If you want to do, if your plat has more pages, then it's a little bit more per page. But you can put it in your books, you can put it in your spreadsheet. It adds up at the bottom. You know how much it's going to cost. You know whether you want to proceed or not. But the planner and many of the other trades, you simply don't know what you're going to get. If you can do it for the surveyor that's reviewing the plan on behalf of the city, and it's fast and does a good job, why can't others do the same?
Well, I think you heard tonight that some of these departments that have grown 40 or 50 or 60% are going to be evaluated.
Okay.
You heard it from our manager. They're going to be evaluated. So we'll take that into consideration, that we just don't ask you to write a blank check, and at the end, you have to sign off on it or you don't get your plans.
And that's happened to us. We've basically been told if you want to go to council, if you want to be put on the agenda, you have to pay this bill, and you sort of get put against the wall. And it's not even the same project, because it happened a year later, and we were told, oh, in this project, if you want to move forward until you pay what you have, you're not.
Well, if we're going to grow, I promise you, we're going to do things positive. And if it means a fee schedule, we'll do a fee schedule. And we'll look at other fees throughout the county, per size of our city, per size of our department, and we'll take it into strong consideration.
Listen,
I assure you.
I do due diligence, so when I'm looking at a new property, one of the things I do is I look at their code, I call the city staffers, and I ask them, how much is this going to cost me? How much is that going to cost me? And based on that, we decide whether to acquire that property and move forward with it or not. I can't really do that in the city of Homestead, because there's this big unknown that is really big, and I don't know how much that's going to be, and it dissuades businesses from taking that already very scary, risky step to open up their restaurant or their boutique. I would encourage that. Even if the decision of the city is to charge twice as much as what anybody else charges for the same, site plan or plat, I think, and I would encourage you to make that known and upfront, because if they want to build here bad enough, at least they know how much it's going to cost them. The problem is that you're having is that people hear these stories and they don't want to jump in the water because they think that shark's going to come bite them 6 months later, when it's too late and they're already up to their necks in this project. So that would be my suggestion, to have a set fee schedule. It's up to you. Obviously, I would encourage you to have, the lower your fees, the more you're going to encourage people to come in this kind of economy. but that's up to you to decide what the fees are going to be, but make them known. Make it easier for people. Think of the guy that has to go to the bank and tell them, this is how much it's going to cost to build, and this is how much this, and the banker says, well, what about this? I really don't know. And after it's stories, well, the bank is going to tell them, go build somewhere else. I'm not giving you a loan. That's the reality that you're living with right now. So that's my suggestion.
Mayor, I'd like to just respond briefly, just because there was a couple of things that concerned me and a couple of things that I thought were very beneficial, but when I hear things like a few years ago and I heard stories, I get nervous because there's a group of people here that work here that had nothing to do with the few years ago and the stories, so I didn't want to leave that on the table, as I don't think it's fair to dump that
Absolutely.
with people who were here
Of course.
that had nothing
No,
to
but
do
I
with
think the
what was
point he's
happening.
trying to make is a fee schedule would be more appropriate if we're going to grow as a city. That's the point he's trying to make.
I prefer to just respond to what I thought was concerning, and I'm not minimizing his concerns at all. I think the issue of fees, I thought was a good point, but I just also didn't want to leave that on the table. And I didn't invent those rules, and the staff didn't invent those rules, and I think I understand why the rules are there. Doesn't necessarily mean that the rules are good or bad, but there's a philosophical issue here.
Sure.
And that is, a company comes in, and they decide they want to build a project which they're going to make money on. And so governments all over the country decide who should pay for the work that's involved with that company coming in that's going to make money. And some cities say, you know what, we should pay because when they build that project and they make money, that's good for the city and it's good for our economy and we make money in the long run. On the other hand, some cities say, well, they're coming here and they're going to be making money, why shouldn't they pay for the work that they're creating in order to get their project done? And so it really is philosophical. And the whole concept of estimating fees also, and again, it's not anything that I invented or created here. It's been here for a while. The whole concept is the government can either subsidize at the front end by taking on work and not having somebody pay for it in the hope they collect it at the back end, or basically taking the money at the front end so that they don't end up losing. And that's really the difference in
Sure.
philosophy. So.
Sure.
I didn't want to leave on the table some thought that the staff invented any of this, because they really didn't. And also the horror stories from a few years ago, I'm very sorry that you had that experience, but number one, we weren't responsible for that, and number two, that's one of the reasons why I'm recommending a consultant to come in here and help maybe see how we can do things even better than we currently do.
And since you've expressed that concern, I'd like to reemphasize that one of the things I mentioned, I recognize that in our last go-around, our last project, the fees were much lower, and it was a much better process than it had been in the past, so I commend you and your team for that. However, I'll also emphasize the point that I still think they're high. And it's still a point of fear because I don't know who's going to be here in 2 years. I hope you're all here and we can continue working together, but I don't know what's going to change in 2 years. So with something that's not on paper that can give me the assurance that I know this is what the fee is going to be, I don't know if we're going to go back to the days where fees, took forever to get billed and they were astronomical. So that's my point. It's better to have a flat fee. Whether it's here or here, it's up to you to decide. It's obviously going to have an impact on who comes in for what.
Right, my point is just that somebody's going to pay those fees. In other words, either the developer is going to pay the fees or the taxpayers,
Yes.
Homestead, are going to pay the fees. So it really is a philosophical shift. And so when you say the fees could be lower, well, if the costs are real. So if
Yes.
the fee is designed to pay the actual cost, if you lower the fees, then, and the actual cost is the same, then the people who will pay for it are the homeowners. So that really is just a philosophical debate, and I think it's a very good debate to have about who, and that's really the big issue of taxation as a whole, is who should pay capital gains. Should there be capital gains tax, and nationally, should there be corporate taxes? Should there be, should rich people pay more than poor people? That's the same concept is the costs are fixed. It's a function of who ends up paying the bill.
Right.
And I agree, everything, I think my cable bill is very high too.
And that's not an argument that I wanted to get into, who pays for what, only the how it's paid, that's my
But
recommendation.
I think your point is well taken, and that's why I spoke up, because I think that's a defense. We're ping-ponging back and forth here, and that's not what it's about. It's about, you're saying, look, tell me it's 200, tell me it's 2,000, put it on paper, here's what it costs to build in Homestead, come one, come all.
Exactly.
I get your point. Got it. Any questions from council? Is there anything else?
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for
Appreciate
coming forward. It's tough, I know.
It's all right.
Point your point.
We're here, we're part of the neighborhood, we want to keep it moving right.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that part, 'cause I think it was very valuable. Any final questions from council before we... Sure?
Good evening. My name is Robert Cambeau. I am managing member of Alliance Homestead, LLC. Our company recently completed the construction of Everglades Preparatory Academy here in the city of Homestead, and I wanted to chime in on our experience in going through the development process here at the city and just really constructively suggest areas where what was a very good process, I think, could be improved. And I think one area I'd ask you to consider, and it also, when he brought up cost recovery, it was part of what I was going to talk about as well. But when you go through your traffic reviews, you ask the developer to do a very intensive traffic study. And I had a similar experience as this gentleman, that my cost to review the traffic study was almost equal to the cost of preparing the traffic study. And that doesn't sound equitable. The worst part is that after doing that through the city and going through, complying with all your requirements, we still don't have an approval on traffic because now we're sent to the county. And then the county's traffic comments really supersede the city's traffic comments. So as a suggestion, I didn't have a problem paying the city to review the traffic study. I think it's a good idea, it's prudent, you need to do it. But I think what you could do is, if you're going to yield to the county on traffic, why don't you have your traffic engineer do the traffic study, we pay for one traffic study, and then we go to the county. Certainly the city would get to what they wanted to accomplish, which was have their staff review our plan, but I wind up paying for 2 traffic studies and have no approval. And I don't think that's what you guys are trying to achieve. I think you want to protect the city and make sure that the city's traffic issues are complied with.
Good point.
But this is the only city I've been in. I built in 6 counties. I built in 8 municipalities. And it's the only city where you have to do 2 traffic studies and not get a traffic approval. So I think that's one area you guys could improve on. I will tell you the building process for the building permit was outstanding. The city staff was great to work with. When you're building schools, the schedule is for crazy people. And, school board doesn't really wait for you if you don't deliver on time. So city was very cooperative in helping us get the school built, and we appreciate it. We appreciate staff. But I have one more. As I got to the end of that process, we went for a sign permit. And not to read you 2 emails that I brought that expressed the frustration of our sign installer, but I could tell you to get just a monument sign installed in front of the school so we could tell parents where to go, that process was longer than the process to get the building built. And no one occupies the sign. There's no humans in it. So it was we almost got sent into a variance. And then, my sign installer complained quite a bit that calls weren't returned and nobody was really giving them any attention. And believe me, I know the sign is not the top of your priorities as a city, but I think you may want to look at how you review signage for businesses who want to open, because businesses need the signs to get people, and certainly schools, forget about businesses, but parents need to know where to go, and buses need to know where to drop off. So I just suggest you take a look at those areas.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, one thing I noticed, there's 2 people that have come up now. I know in the past, they have had workshops with staff and the local developers, all the major developers, and they would get together and they would kind of have this roundtable discussion as far as what's working and what's not. From the developer standpoint, what could be better during our process? And from staff standpoint, why we do what we do. And I think it's a good exchange of ideas, and I don't know when the last time the City of Homestead has held such a workshop or such a roundtable discussion, but after hearing what I've heard tonight from these two individuals, and some of them are individual issues that maybe don't apply globally, but some are not. Some are things that some of these developers that have gone through our process can give us direct feedback. And I know as a policymaker, it's very beneficial for me to know that that's taken place and to see that exchange, because it helps me in understanding what policy I want to put forth and what policy the city wants to put forth as far as attracting businesses and economic development. So that's one of the things I guess I would recommend, that I think it would be good for the city to hold with staff and some of the major developers here in town, and have a forum and have a roundtable discussion and actually have this exchange of ideas, so that at the end of the day, when we're assessing our process, we have done so with the input of these developers and with the people that are directly capitalizing, I guess, on what we have here. So that would be a recommendation that I would have.
Thank you.
So in party thought, I want to tell you that I tried to build a charter school in Homestead for probably more than 5 or 6 years. Going back to the prior administration comment, I can tell you this administration really helped make this school happen, and under prior administrations, it would have never happened. So thanks again, and we appreciate all your help.
Well, thank you for your input.
Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to tell you that the last workshop that I remember, and I don't know if we would call it a workshop, but it was, I think, in 2008, and there were quite a few people there, quite a few builders, developers, but also citizens, because as Mr. Gretz has said, you know, when cost, if the real cost is a real value, somebody has to pay for it. So actually I have that under my business tonight in my notes to bring up, that we have another workshop. It was quite beneficial. It was good to hear what people had to say. It was good to hear what staff had to say. And the good thing about the workshop, if we do have it, Mayor, is that we should allow staff to have a place on the dais where they can actually address questions and give suggestions and come to a meeting of the minds. As far as the schedule goes, I need to find out from the consultant and from the staff. I mean, this is something that's, you know, there's some research going to have to be done on this. How do other cities do it? Mr. Cordino, I'm sure you have some suggestions, which, you know, you'll bring forward if we do have a workshop. But as the mayor said, we're all willing and to listen. We want businesses to come. We want businesses to stay. So that being said, I hope we do have a workshop, Mayor.
Yes.
And
sounds good. No,
the economics in the city, to me, without thriving businesses, we all love the small storefronts. We all love the as I used to be. I had a business in the Falls area, and I was a mom and pop store owner. But we need the big stores too. We need the chains, and so that's top priority in my book. So thank you.
No, thank you, and I think it's very well taken. I did not know we did 2, and the county had to approve. I did not know that. I thought once we approved, it was approved. So that will be something we'll look into very quickly. Thank you all very much. Any final questions from council? Is there something? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium.
Hi all, my name is Juan Osorno. I'm a property owner in Homestead, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to make 2 comments about my process through the city. We applied for to build an additional building on an existing property, which by code I understand is not allowed. We just wanted to see if there was a chance to build it. We also applied for other permits in the city, and they were approved in a timely manner. The cost to apply for the variance is the one that I wanted to talk to you about. I hate comparisons, but I think sometimes they are good. In the city of Florida City, I went through the same process I am going through here in Homestead now. And the cost down there was $1,500 for the process. Here, the cost is about $7,000 for basically the same process. So that's one suggestion. I know the other gentleman talked about it, and I thought it was a good point. and I wanted to give you more information on what the expenses in the city of Homestead are. And last, I just wanted to say that, I know you guys are working on the processes and to make them faster. I would personally benefit from that since I'm going through my process and it's taking longer than I wanted it. But hopefully, we will be successful in getting it approved. I am going to ask the council members for a meeting to explain what the process, what the idea is, and maybe we'll get it approved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any final questions from council? Any final questions from the public? Excuse me. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
Good evening, City of Homestead. I know you, Mayor, very well from where I work. This is my 39th transfer for the U.S. Department of Labor, and I decided to make Homestead my home. I'm in the process of going to build a new home, but I have a concern. You have a hazardous insurance that's been forced on new homeowners. If the home is being built in 2012, and the last building code is dated 2001, now the hazardous insurance is, I feel as if that you're selling, not so much you, but the home builders are selling fear instead of so much of acquiring a home. The cost on it is ridiculous for the simple reason we're purchasing a new home. Is there any way at all the city of Homestead can possibly have a building inspector as a part of to inspect the homes that's being built by these builders? Because that was one of my concerns that I did address up to the builder.
Okay, through the mayor, can you answer that, John? Mr. Cornell? Did you understand the question?
We inspect all the homes that are built.
Through our process, through our building department, we inspect all the homes.
Okay. All right then. So that will be our support in the sense of not really necessarily really have the hazardous insurance, correct? Or more or less it's just selling it point to consumers.
That's an insurance question. I think it's a matter of personal preference and safety, for the hazard insurance. I mean, I don't think it's mandated or required by us.
Okay. All right then.
It is. I didn't know it is, so. No.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to ask too personal questions, but sometimes when you're going through a certain loan process, there are rules and regulations in place that you have to have. I don't want you to tell us what you're doing or how you're obtaining your home, but it's really, I think, out of our hands, Mayor. I think it's mandatory or regulated by loans that can be generated under the process. So that might be something that you might want to look
bank
into.
requirement.
Maybe, for example, if you put down a certain amount of money, you don't have to have the PMI insurance. There's all kinds of rules and that you have to follow depending on what loan program.
Well, honestly, this is my 7th home, and 6th one being built from the ground up, and that's why I was curious. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Pamela Turnbull Johnson. I live in Homestead, 2539 Southeast 14th Street. And thank you for supporting the Job Corps program. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any final questions from the public? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any final questions from council? Hearing none, seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilwoman Walden? Councilwoman Walden?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fairclough McCormick?
Yes.
Councilman Shelley?
Yes.
Councilman Maldonado?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burgess?
Yes.
Mayor Bateman?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion to move on. CAR 612, adoption of fiscal year 2013 budget. Richard? Okay, that's good. Okay. We're done? Okay, motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. All in favor? Okay, we'll have a 5-minute break before we move into our council meeting.